My childhood best friend betrayed me and stole everything I built. Now he wants forgiveness. I never thought I'd be the one writing something like this. I've always scrolled through Reddit, reading stories about backstabbing friends, cheating partners, and family betrayals, and I always thought, that could never happen to me. But here I am, picking up the pieces of a friendship that spanned 2 decades, trying to understand how everything went so horribly wrong. Let me take you back to where it all started. The beginning. I met Jake when I was 6 years old. We were both kids from working-class families, growing up in the same neighborhood where everyone knew each other. Our moms became friends, which meant we spent most of our childhood together, sleepovers, bike rides, video games, and 1,000 shared secrets. If someone had asked me back then who my brother was, I would have said Jake. We were inseparable. We built tree houses, fought imaginary battles, and dreamed about the future. Even when we got older and life got more complicated, we stayed close. We stuck together through everything: middle school awkwardness, high school crushes, and even the struggles of college applications. When we both got into universities in the same city, we moved in together. It wasn't even a question, we had always planned to stick together. Jake was the kind of friend who could light up any room. He was charismatic, quick-witted, and always had a way of talking himself out of trouble. Meanwhile, I was the quieter one, the one who made sure rent was paid on time, the one who remembered birthdays and made sure we had food in the fridge. I never minded, he was my best friend, my brother in all but blood. The red flags. But over time, I started noticing things. Small things. Jake had always been a little selfish, but I chalked it up to his personality. He was the type to borrow money and forget to pay it back. The type to take credit for things he didn't do. The type to talk big but never actually follow through. There were moments that, in hindsight, should have warned me. Like the time in high school when we worked on a group project together. I did all the work, but he somehow charmed the teacher into thinking he had contributed equally. Or when we applied for summer jobs together, and he stole an opportunity from me by lying about his skills. I let those things slide because, in my mind, friends forgive. I ignored the red flags. I shouldn't have. The startup idea. After college, we both started working in the same industry, tech. We had always been into coding and spent nights in high school building small projects together. When I landed a good job at a mid-sized company, I was thrilled. Jake, on the other hand, struggled to keep a job. He was smart, no doubt about it, but he had a bad habit of slacking off, missing deadlines, and sweet-talking his way out of trouble. Then came the startup idea. Jake approached me with this big, elaborate plan, an app that could change the industry. He was passionate, excited, and for the first time in a while, I saw the old Jake, the dreamer. He wanted us to build it together. He had the connections, he said, and I had the technical skills. I was hesitant at first, but eventually, I gave in. We started working on it in our free time. I handled the coding, the infrastructure, the entire backbone of the project, while Jake handled networking and business strategy. He claimed he was lining up investors, getting us noticed. Months passed, and the project turned into something real. I was pulling all-nighters, writing every single line of code, debugging, making sure everything worked. Meanwhile, Jake would check in occasionally, throw in an idea or two, and then disappear for days at a time. Then, one day, he just vanished. The betrayal. I tried calling him, texting him, nothing. For weeks, I thought something had happened to him. Then, out of nowhere, I saw an announcement. Jake had launched the app. Our app. Only, my name was nowhere to be found. He had rebranded everything, taken all my work, and presented it as his own. He had secured funding, gotten investors, and even managed to partner with a big company. And I? I was erased. I confronted him, of course. I stormed into his new fancy office, demanding answers. He acted surprised, like he didn't understand why I was so mad. Dude, I had to make some quick decisions. Investors didn't want 2 founders. It's just business. Just business. I felt like I had been stabbed in the back. This wasn't just a project. This was years of friendship, trust, and loyalty, all thrown away because he saw a chance to make money and took it. The aftermath. I was devastated. But I wasn't stupid. I had proof, every email, every version of the code, every conversation we had. I lawyered up. The legal battle was brutal. Jake fought hard, but the evidence was undeniable. In the end, I won. I got full rights to the code, compensation for damages, and the company he had built off my work crumbled without it. Jake was ruined. You'd think that would be the end of it. That I'd feel victorious. But all I felt was hollow. For months, I kept replaying everything in my head, every childhood memory, every late-night conversation, every moment when I believed we were brothers. And in the end, none of it mattered to him. Then, last week, he reached out. A long email. Apologizing. Saying he had hit rock bottom. That he lost everything, that he missed our friendship, that he didn't know why he did what he did. He asked if we could meet. The dilemma. And I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to tell him to go to hell. To remind him that he made his choices, that he knew what he was doing, that he destroyed 2 decades of friendship for money. But another part of me, the stupid, sentimental part, remembers the kid I grew up with. The friend who once stood up for me in middle school when I was getting bullied. The person I used to call my brother. I don't know if I can ever trust him again. But I don't know if I can completely shut the door, either. Reddit, what would you do? Story 2. My parents always favored my sister. Now our grandparents gave them an ultimatum. I always knew my parents loved my little sister more. It wasn't something they ever said outright, but I felt it in every small moment, every ignored cry for attention, every time they looked at her with pure adoration while I stood in the background, unnoticed. It started when she was born. I was 6 years old enough to remember a time when I had been the center of their world, before everything changed. When they brought her home from the hospital, I was excited. I had wanted to be a big brother, someone who would protect her, play with her, teach her things. But I quickly realized that, in their eyes, she was the only child who mattered. On her first birthday, they threw a massive party. Dozens of people came, balloons covered every inch of the living room, a 3-tier cake sat on the table like a wedding centerpiece. I remembered watching as they fussed over her, taking endless pictures, encouraging her to smash the cake with her tiny hands. Then I thought about my own birthday that year. I had turned 7 just a few months earlier. There had been no party, no decorations, not even a cake. My mom had handed me a cupcake with a candle in it and told me to make a wish. My dad had been too busy to even be there. But I was just a kid. I told myself it was okay. Maybe they had been busy. Maybe next year would be different. It wasn't. Every birthday, it was the same. For me, there were quick, last-minute celebrations. A store-bought cake, a small present if they remembered. For her, there were grand events, expensive gifts, new clothes and toys that she didn't even need. I started noticing how much effort they put into making her feel special, while I became more and more invisible. But it wasn't just birthdays. It was everything. When I was 8, I had saved up my allowance for months to buy a new toy car I had seen in the store. I was so proud of myself when I finally had enough money. But when my sister pointed at the same toy and said she wanted it, my parents bought it for her immediately. She got it for free. I had to work for it. I tried to tell myself it didn't matter. That I was just imagining things. But it was hard to ignore when, year after year, it kept happening. She got the newest clothes while I wore hand-me-downs or cheap clearance items. She got a new bike for Christmas while I got socks. She got to pick what we ate for dinner, where we went on family outings, what movies we watched. I was just there. When I was 12, I joined the soccer team at school. I begged my parents to come to my games, just once. My dad always had work. My mom was too busy. But when my sister took up ballet, they attended every recital, front row, recording every second on their phones. At 16, I got my first job. I wanted to save up for a car, since I knew my parents wouldn't buy me one. Every paycheck, I put money aside. I worked weekends, evenings, whatever hours I could get. My sister turned 16 2 years later. On the morning of her birthday, my parents surprised her with a brand new car in the driveway. I had spent 2 years working for mine. She got hers handed to her with a big red bow on top. That was the moment something inside me finally broke. I tried talking to them. I tried telling them how I felt, how unfair it all was. They brushed it off. You're the older one. You have to be more responsible. You should be happy for your sister. Stop being jealous. So I stopped trying. I focused on school, on working, on getting away from them. By the time I left for college, I had learned not to expect anything from them. I paid for everything myself: tuition, rent, food. They never sent money, never checked in. But my sister? They paid for her apartment, her tuition, her expenses. They visited her every month. I wasn't surprised. But it still hurt. It wasn't until our grandparents found out that everything changed. I don't know how they figured it out. Maybe they noticed how I was never around during holidays. Maybe they saw the way my parents doted on my sister while barely acknowledging me. Or maybe they just finally started paying attention. But when they did, they were furious. My grandfather, who had always been a quiet man, called a family meeting. My parents didn't take it seriously at first, until he looked them in the eyes and said, "If you don't start treating both of your children equally, you can consider yourselves cut out of our will." That got their attention. At first, they tried to deny it. We love both of our children the same. But my grandmother didn't let them off the hook. Then explain why you paid for everything for one child and left the other to fend for himself. They had no answer. For the first time in my life, I saw guilt in their eyes. I saw them realize what they had done. They tried to reach out after that. They started calling me more, asking how I was doing. They offered to help with my student loans, to send me money if I needed it. But it was too late. I didn't want their money. I just wanted them to have loved me the way they loved her. They're trying now. Trying to fix things, trying to make up for years of neglect. And maybe, eventually, I'll be able to forgive them. But some wounds don't heal just because someone finally decides to say sorry.